Good morning, fifth graders. Today for science, we're going to look at how organisms interact. Interact means basically how do they live together or what do they do with one another. So there's a variety of ways that organisms interact. It's kind of like when you're at school, you interact with your classmates. Sometimes you work well together, sometimes you play together, sometimes you have arguments. That's all how you interact. Organisms are the same way. And the question we're going to answer today is how do organisms interact? So our essential question is very similar to the title of this. Now we're going to skip this little part. The first way that animals interact is through competition. And that is they fight over resources such as food, water, shelter, territory, or mates. So competition, if there's three pieces of candy on a table and there's four of you, and I say whoever gets there first can have the candy, maybe one of you gets the candy, maybe three of you get the candy, but four of you aren't. That's kind of the competition. Who's going to win out? So we're familiar with this word because anytime you play a game or have play a sport, you're competing against each other. And it's the same thing. Animals do the same things for the things listed here. Animals compete for water. If there's not a lot of water, they're going to fight over it. It's the same thing with food. They're in competition for food. So if they're a herbivore, they're going to be trying to get the best grasses. If they're carnivore, they're going to fight after other meats they can eat. And maybe it's the same species fighting over it, but that doesn't matter. It's how they interact. And competition is fighting over that. So one interesting one is territory. In territory here, there's certain animals, larger, usually carnivorous animals, that will mark their territory. Basically, in their urine, which is a fancy word for in their pee, they have pheromones. They have a scent in it. And when they mark their territory, which means they urinate on something, that scent gets put there and it tells other animals, don't come here, this is my area. Now that only works if they're really the same species. So I think wolves do this and dogs will do this. I'm pretty sure lions and tigers probably do it as well. I'm not positive on that, but they may. And so they mark their territory. You see there's two bears fighting down here. That's kind of the same thing. They're fighting for a territory. Who will be dominant? Dogs are what you'd call pack animals, and usually there's what they call an alpha male. There's a male that rises to the top and is the most aggressive, and the other animals in the pack or the herd can't or just can't beat it. So this animal, as long as it's healthy, is the dominant male, and then all the other males either have to leave or they come secondary. So basically what it means is that male is not only in charge of the pack or the herd, but it can also mate with the females as well. So when you see animals butting heads like this, they're usually fighting for mates and for that dominance to be the alpha male. So that's some competition. So animals fight for mates. They fight over territory and they mark their territory, so they interact that way. And they fight for shelter too, I guess. Beavers make dams, and the dams are what they live in. So different beavers are in competition for different kinds of wood and different resources. So that's the first way animals interact, is through competition. This will be important for our assignment later, to know just exactly how they compete for territory and mates and that sort of thing. So like I said, many animals mark their territory, and so there's only a few in that area. Tigers eat a lot, so you can't have a lot of tigers in one area. So they mark their territory, which means don't come here. And then they'll fight over mates. Males will fight, and whoever is dominant gets to mate. All right. Then this is just we're not going to show the clip of Bambi. All right. So this next word is symbiosis, and it says living together, but I guess that's a good way. We're going to look at several forms of symbiosis here. And you see some images here. You have this a crocodile, I imagine, and a bird in its mouth, and the bird is cleaning the alligator's teeth. Well, we're going to see exactly what kind of symbiosis that is. You know, the bird gets food by eating what's in there, and the alligator crocodile gets the benefit of getting clean teeth. Here, this muskox, I think it would be, it has the birds riding on it, but I'm sure the birds are eating insects off the back of this. Well, that's a wildebeest. That's what that is. It's not a muskox. So the birds get fed by eating the bugs off the back of this wildebeest, and the wildebeest gets free of it. And over here, you get the fish. The fish get protection from, I guess this would be a form of coral of some sort. I'm not quite sure. So symbiosis is kind of animals living together to help each other out. But what's important is we're going to see different kinds of it. The first kind is called mutualism. And that's two organisms work together and both benefit. So that's kind of what we saw in the previous picture. Here, this bee gets pollen, so it can make honey and feed its larva. And here, this flower gets pollinated, so it can produce seeds. So they work together for the benefit of both. And it's the same thing with the crocodile and the bird. They both benefit from this relationship. And that form of symbiosis is called mutualism. The next one is called parasitism. And maybe you've heard of parasites. Viruses are parasites. And that's when one organism benefits while the other is harmed. So a mosquito would be a parasite. We don't like these mosquitoes. You can actually see it's poking into this person's skin. The person does not benefit from this mosquito, and the mosquito is benefiting from the person. And here this caterpillar is being attacked by some sort of larva. It's not benefiting from that at all. So only one organism benefits while the other is harmed. I guess you could, some common parasites you get in the jungle might be like a tapeworm, which is a worm that lives in your intestines, and as you eat food, it eats and just lives, and you can get sick from it, but you don't get any. It benefits, but you don't. You probably get sick. So that's what parasitism is. The next one is commensalism. One organism benefits while the other is not affected. So here, these birds, they might get some bugs, but there's nothing that really helps the deer. This coral acts as protection for the fish, but the coral really doesn't benefit. And here, the lamprey, I think that's what you would call those, they cling on to the shark, and they're able to move swiftly that way, but the shark really doesn't benefit from them being there. But the little lamprey or whatever they are, they do benefit. So commensalism is a form of symbiosis in which one organism benefits and the other does not. All right. The next one is energy in an ecosystem. And I don't think we're going to stop there. This energy in an ecosystem is going to be saved for later. What you'll get today, let's see if I can, you'll be getting this sheet in a little bit. And so you'll have to define competition and symbiosis. And you can give an example here of basically how do animals compete in symbiosis. And hold on a second, I'm getting a phone call. Well, how about that? I just got a phone call. I don't get phone calls because I don't have a SIM card in America. But this came from China. I don't know. They were trying to sell me something. And I politely said, Wadzai Megwa, Budzai Zhongguo. And they're like, oh, you must be a foreigner and you're not here. And I'm like, that's right. Anyways, so in this part, an example of how animals compete for food and water. Over here, an example of how they compete for mates. And here how they compete for territory. So I explained some of this earlier in the video. Over here, give an example of mutualism, parasitism, and commensalism. Yeah, yeah. Now, this part here, we're not going to do yet. We're going to save this for the next science lesson. And when we do it, don't turn this in yet. Save this. And then once we do the next video, go ahead and fill this out. That's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow.